Hey guys, welcome to season 3 of the Conscious Kitchen podcast. We're so excited that you guys joined us back for this amazing season we have lined up for you guys. To say this year has been hard is an understatement. Many of us are separated from loved ones. We lost a person or know someone who's died from COVID, going to work or places worried about getting sick. We're doing our best to keep calm, informed, and healthy during these introspective and trying times. We want to be sure to give you the best and rawest content to help you navigate through the rest of this year. Interviews and guests to help you stay inspired, heal, connect, and grow. This season, we have stories including music producer Toki Monsta, LA Times culture journalist Kaylin Hype, vegan chef Sweet Simple Vegan, and licensed psychotherapist Alyssa Marie Wellness, to name a few. Joining us today for the third time with Alyssa Marie Wellness, our annual tradition to open up our new season with Alyssa. It's exciting. Alyssa is a licensed clinical social worker based in Sherman Oaks, California. Also best known for her Instagram platform that has daily tips for mental health, and it led her to a highly engaged Instagram audience. Leah strongly believes in the power of human connections, relationships, and emotional growth. She's also a business owner and an all-around wonderful friend and a spark of light. Please welcome Leah to season 3 of our podcast.
Yay! Welcome, Leah, season 3 of the podcast. We're super excited to be here with you guys.
Yeah, welcome back. Third
Thank
season.
you.
Thanks, Babe, for joining us. She was with us for the first season, the second season, and now the third.
Yes. Leah was with us for our first episode that we even tried to record. So that is so amazing to have you back and have you here chatting with us about such important issues, coping, the upcoming elections, just the overall uncertainty of 2020 and beyond. Those are some of the things that we're going to be discussing today. So we're really excited to have your insight.
Thank you. And I'm glad to be here for a third season in a row. And for anybody that's listening and maybe a little confused, I have two names, Alyssa and Leah. So just to clarify, since we're interchanging between the names, I just want people to know it's the same person.
Yes, yes, true. So who do we want to go with today?
Leah.
Yeah, yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Welcome,
All right.
welcome.
Yeah, welcome. And thank you guys for tuning in. So let's just jump right in. So we know 2020 has been, just a very crazy year. And we have a big upcoming election here in the United States, which is causing people a lot of stress. So at a time where a lot of us are trying to stay updated on news and just remain up to date on current events, which can be also overwhelming, what advice, Leah, do you have to stay educated but also protect your energy?
So there's so much information coming at us in so many different avenues, from the news to what's happening through our phones, to the radio, to podcasts, to Twitter, Instagram, all of that. Facebook, people are posting stories, and oftentimes these stories aren't credible. And we definitely live in an age where opinions are presented as factual information.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think it's so incredibly important that people be mindful if they're engaging in doom scrolling. And I don't know the exact definition of doom scrolling, but it's like you're really just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and consuming information, right? To the point where it's like taking up all of your energy, to the point where you're feeling so depleted afterwards, or to the point where you're having just such a negative view on life and this world. So I just think that people have to set boundaries with the amount of time they are engaging with this type of information, and people have to really get to know themselves too, right? When will I know that it's time to turn off my phone? When will I know that it's time to engage with another human being and talk about something different? A lot of this is just being able to recognize your own red flags of doom scrolling and then just doing something different behaviorally.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's definitely, it's hard to be honest with yourself because it's so easy to just get sucked into the internet these days. Like you said, there's so much information and it's hard to weed through all of it. But so do you have any tips on maybe making it easier to acknowledge when you're doom scrolling?
I think asking yourself this question, as I'm doing this, am I being informed or am I going down a rabbit hole?
Yeah.
Is this information helping me in this moment or is it hurting me? What would happen if I didn't check the news for 24 hours? How would my life change? And I remember when COVID happened and we had to all shelter in place out here in California, and there was just a lot of like, how do we help clients navigate overconsumption of the news, but protecting their
Right.
energy while staying informed? It's a fine balance. But one of the recommendations that were going around was really, you really only need to check sources once a day, like
Yeah.
once or twice a day, because the information is constantly changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly not beneficial to know everything that's happening at every minute.
It's so true.
Right. I feel
Yeah.
like it's a bit hard because it's like when you're scrolling and you're like on social media,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of hard because you kind of your consciousness takes a back seat, like when you're watching television, so you kind of just tap out and just browse. I feel like so. I guess that is a great new tool that we can use.
Mhm.
Being making sure that we ask ourselves the question too, and also like thinking before you speak. Just thinking about what our purpose is before we start scrolling, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to do that own little check with myself because since the pandemic hit, I've been spending like 2 hours reading news, like one in the morning and one at night. I just feel like there's so much to know, and whether it's good news, bad news, just all the kinds of news. So last week I was like, all right, I kind of need a break. So all last week, I really didn't check the news. I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself this break, just kind of like clear my mind. I know things are going to happen. I'm going to see the news, the big news that happens via social media anyway. But I was like, let me just untap. And that was really freeing. It was just a good balance for me. So yes, definitely encourage you guys to just, I guess, have your own relationship with it, right? Set
Yeah.
your own balance, like you said, and have that good
Yeah.
phone hygiene.
Yeah, I like that. Find out what your relationship with it is, because some people may not be able to read information like this before going to bed,
Right.
right? Some people, it might affect their sleep, it might make them stay up longer, it might give them anxiety, things like that. And so for those people, it might be better to consume the information in the morning. And again, the opposite could be true. People in the morning could affect the rest of their day, right?
Right.
You really want to know what works best for you in terms of the time that I'm consuming this information.
Yes. Yes, definitely. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on to where we'll talk about the elections again because this
Hmm.
country is super divided at this time. It's just
Hmm.
it just feels like one of the most divided times in history. So either
Hmm.
way, no matter who wins, there's destined to be feelings of anger, disappointment, and frustration. How can people prepare themselves in advance to cope with that?
Gosh, that's such a good question. That's such a good question. Well, let me ask you guys something. Do you guys know how you're going to
Yes.
cope if things don't go the way you're hoping, planning, wanting?
No, I only have plans to mobilize. I'm like, I'm gonna go sit in the middle of
There
the
you
street.
go.
I'm like, I'm mobilizing. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna use my body. It's like my plan is just to
Ooh,
act it
Right.
to act it.
Well,
participate.
yeah, it can go
Yeah.
so many
Participate.
different ways, right? Because I mean, Trump said even if he is, not appointed as the next president, doesn't mean he'll actually leave.
Mm. Yeah, I think that the first words that came in my mind is grief. Like just grieve. Just grieve, just like grieve the reality of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
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 Like give yourself permission to be sad, give yourself permission to be upset, give yourself permission to feel all of the things. And then like Liz said, mobilize. If
If the
that's what's right for you, if that's
right,
what feels right for you,
if that's
if
the path.
you know.
You
Mhm.
know, or unless we all vote and everything goes well, could be very hopeful for us also. So,
Yeah. But either way, like since the country is so divided, it's like some side is gonna be like upset with this. So it's like whether we agree with that other side, I'm just curious like how everyone can really cope with it.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that, Leah. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for saying that. Like just
Yeah.
processing it instead of like automatically reacting or acting or, you know, being in action. I agree with that.
Yeah. And I'm just
Yeah.
thinking like very micro level, right? Because we see this big thing that's the election. And that's
Mhm.
like a big macro representative of what, like representation of what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think that, you know, coping on a micro level is focusing on the organizations, like just from a social justice perspective, focusing on the organizations that do align with your values, putting
Mm-hmm.
your efforts into those organizations, focusing on the people who are doing the groundwork, who are in the trenches. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's just like, it's really thinking like not all is lost.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want to get black and white like that, like all is lost, everything sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Even though it's, it can feel that way. So then finding organizations that are in the trenches and aligning with them to
Yeah.
feel connected.
Yeah, I guess that can even apply to helping your own community. So
Mm-hmm.
finding organizations of people that are doing things to help outside of the election, outside
Mm-hmm.
of that genre of what's occurring, but find inspiration in other ways to activate within your community to encourage, growth in the other areas, or the areas they might be fearful of that might be lost in the future.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think as human beings, when big things like this happen, we have a tendency to go into just like black and white catastrophic thinking. And I think that's valid. It's
Mm-hmm.
incredibly valid, but we also have to bring ourselves back and recognize the organizations that are fighting for our justice, that are fighting for our rights, and align with them.
Mm-hmm. So
Like, you don't
true.
want to throw in the entire towel.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. That's a yeah, all really good tips to build that internal coping system
Mm-hmm.
for this upcoming time and, just the
Mm-hmm.
next few months.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, I know Laura had some questions about her own personal path to just staying educated if you wanted to.
Yeah. So, with the elections coming up, which is, every day we're getting bombarded with like, are you registered to vote? Are you, um, are you going to vote? Who are you voting for? And then everyone talks about all the news coming up with Trump and everything that he's done, or, not paying his taxes and, constantly bombarded with the news, as Liz mentioned in the beginning of the podcast. State election officials and citizens in the US are bracing for two trains on a possible collision course this fall. I feel sometimes like I'm not doing enough. I want to be a good citizen and vote, encourage others to vote through social media, and have discussions with my family and friends. But why do I constantly feel unprepared or like I'm not doing enough?
I think that's a normal feeling to have, and I think that's a normal feeling that everybody has. So I just want to validate that. And it goes back to feelings aren't facts. It feels like we're not doing enough because there's a lot that has to be done, and there's a lot to do. But then we have to also remember our humanness, and that there's only so much we can do, and whatever we get done in that day is enough, right? We only have the bandwidth to do a certain amount of things in a day. And I think when we get activated to want to do all of these things and we don't do them, then it feels like we're not doing enough. But the reality of it is, we're doing exactly what is within our bandwidth.
I love that. So yeah, maybe, make a list for the day and don't beat yourself up for not
Mm-hmm.
accomplishing more than
Mm-hmm.
what you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you, Leah. Also, we're also dealing with a pandemic globally, which has been so trying for all of us. And, every day we're, dealing with the new norms, dealing with people at the grocery store, people not wearing their masks, social distancing and such. It's a new normal for everybody, right? Um, the kind of mannerisms that we keep around people and all these things. So I believe that sometimes maybe we're dealing with fighting COVID fatigue. We're tired of being cooped up, we're tired of being careful, we're tired of being scared. Our collective fatigue is making some people careless. Also, one reason COVID is sharply rising again in California and globally, and throughout the globe during the fall season, how can we incorporate small daily practices for better mental health to fight COVID fatigue?
So, some basic things to take care of our mental health during COVID fatigue. Number one is to practice self care. So, whatever that looks like for you, whether that's going for a walk, cooking yourself a nice meal, reading a book, lighting a candle, you really want to engage in those types of practices. The second one would be creating a routine. You know, a loss that's been experienced for a lot of people during COVID was like a loss of routine, and I don't think we recognize how important for all of us the routine was.
Mm-hmm.
Like our commutes, the people we saw every day, the getting our coffee in the morning, or whatever it is that we did. So you want to continue to create a semblance of routine during the during this whole pandemic. And then you want to stay, this depends on each person's personality type, but with what fits with you, you want to stay emotionally connected with the people that you care about and with people that bring you joy. So whether that's having conversations, texting, doing FaceTime calls, or even like social distancing, hanging out, because I think that's allowed. You know, everybody's personal preference is different. You really want to stay connected as best you can, because we're human beings. We're wired for that. We're wired for that. So you just do your best.
Yeah. I have a question about that.
Mhm.
So it's always about doing, the self-care and doing that type of wellness
Mhm.
to just get yourself in positive thinking. A lot of people, they have, let's say, wellness routines that they can't even do. So let's say for me, like I really, really love and appreciate like massages. It's like one thing that connects me to like humanity in a way, because like when someone else is using like their energy on me, I'm like so grateful. And so that's such a part of like my self-care, but I can't do that now. So it's like now I've had to just incorporate other things, but I'm like, oh, I feel like this desire and need for like that, my real form of self-care, which is like getting like a massage, but it's something we still can't do. So do you have any tips on maybe embracing new routines or new wellness routines in that sense?
I wonder if there's a way you can
Yeah.
modify what worked for you,
Hmm.
right? Like if you can get like and we have to recognize it's not going to be the same and it's not going to feel the same.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what was the thing that I loved doing and how can I modify it for this situation?
Right.
Right? So if you could order some sort of like massager that you could just do on yourself.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I know. Or
Amazon.
yeah.
yeah, or if you can
Yeah.
just stretch your body, just like something that incorporates that mind body connection, because that's what massages do sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. Just, I guess, thinking outside of the box and finding ways
Yeah.
to make that experience just different now.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I like what you said, going back to what you said, Leah, about creating routine and connection. So maybe like in the morning, well, after you take a breakfast or after you spend a few hours like on your emails, maybe incorporate connecting with a loved one or a friend or a family member during your lunch break and just checking in with people maybe for some connection in the
Yeah.
weekly or daily practice. I think that's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Awesome.
these are some awesome tips to fight COVID fatigue, guys. Hope you
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed
If
that.
and if you're experiencing COVID fatigue, if you're experiencing depression, anxiety, or withdrawal or irritability, and you're kind of hitting this pandemic wall, you have to tell somebody. You just have to tell, I guess I don't want to use the word have, but it's, I recommend telling somebody, because one of the ways in which we work with these symptoms we're experiencing is if we share what we're going through with somebody else. These feelings, they thrive and they grow in isolation. But the moment we can open that door and let somebody else in, the feelings can start to go down a little bit more. So
Yeah,
it's just important you tell somebody.
right. And you know what, I noticed that because like a few months ago, I was feeling a lot of low
Hmm.
points being isolated here at home. But I think that I was like, oh, I'll get through it. But speaking to a
Hmm.
friend, she was like, you're having a lot of low points. Every time I speak to you, you're having a
Hmm.
lot of low points. And I'm thinking to myself, like, wow, like I do need to talk to somebody about it, and I do need to acknowledge that I am going through some low points, because I feel as women we have such a threshold for like uncomfort and pain almost, or just
Hmm.
we deal with the irritabilities, we deal with period pains and migraines and all these things, so it's kind of hard to voice it, you know.
Hmm. Hmm. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, I think as women we always have that issue, right? Not voicing as not voicing things as loudly as men would, like you think about the pay disparities and like just things like that. So I think we're always just more comfortable with suffering in silence, it seems like sometimes. But yes, good tip, tell somebody, whoever that person may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Laura was touching on how people are getting anxious to just head out, and there's just so many different preferences on the views of COVID. How do you have any advice on the best way to ask someone how safe they've been? How many people do they hang out with? If they've been tested? Just tips on getting a safety, social anxiety out of the way.
Honestly, you just want to be direct.
Hmm.
You really just want to be direct, and you want to come from a place, I guess, of like like I'm very careful about this.
Mm.
it's important for me that I don't get sick and that you don't get sick. So I have some questions. You have
Yes.
every right to ask these questions. And oftentimes social anxiety comes from not feeling like you should or you can't, or what if it looks like this?
Yeah.
So it's just so important for people to recognize it's okay if it looks a certain way to others, and you have a right to know. Now, with that said, other people have a right not to answer, right? Like you can't control if another person wants to answer those questions. You can't control how another person responds or reacts to your line of questioning, especially if that person doesn't believe in what's happening, or is on the other side of the spectrum of things. However, you have a right to ask anything you want to ask. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where
Questions I have.
it gets tricky, right? Because sometimes you feel like your friend is going to judge you, or they're going to get upset, or like you said, you can only be responsible for your question, but then how they're going to perceive it is really on them. But we worry, are they going to judge me? Are they going to? It's really it is a hard thing to just like come out and straight up and ask, but
right. Yeah, I think that we're going through a different type of etiquette, right? Social etiquette that we all have to be kind of tippy-toeing around. And yeah, we do have to control what we say, but also we're going to get embarrassed, right? You're going to get embarrassed. I'm going to get embarrassed, possibly forgetting a mask or walking in somewhere where you don't have your mask. You're going to get embarrassed, but I think the point is that that feeling's going to pass. And,
exactly.
that feeling will pass. So make sure that you say what you have to say, and don't worry if the other person will get embarrassed, because you're just trying to protect both of you guys. Yeah. So we're all learning.
Yeah.
We're all learning how this.
You want to do the thing that's going to make you feel the least resentful at the end.
Do the thing that we feel least resentful.
I know you got to think about it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think, and yeah, some people are not going to decide to wear the mask, right? Or not decide to wash their hands. And you kind of have to stay away from those people, because if not, you'll be another viral video on YouTube.
Right.
Altercation happens or something like that. And that's what we don't want, especially during these election times and pandemic times.
Yeah. It's a good opportunity to practice setting boundaries.
Yes. And if everyone can just stay kind and just think like, what if there was something that you wanted to know and you were asking someone, and maybe not things personally, just understand that this is just the new way things are going to be. So to stay on topic with asking people and setting your own boundaries, with the winter approaching, there's a new push to get the vaccine for the flu or even COVID once that comes out. This is obviously a personal decision, but how can someone firmly state their opinion, no matter what that may be, without offending friends and family?
I think this goes back to the previous question, which is you just have to be honest, you have to be direct. And if people get offended, that's outside of your scope of what you have control over. And whatever it is that you communicate, you do want to do your best to communicate it from a place of love and compassion. And you want to make sure that you monitor your tone. You want to make sure you keep your defenses in check, and you just want to be assertive without being harmful. People can get offended. You can be loving and compassionate and direct and say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and I respect or don't respect what you're going to do, whatever. But you just want to make sure the way in which you're communicating it is coming from a place of compassion, and how people respond to that is really out of your control.
I love that. How about also having like an intention before you start the conversation, like expressing expressing your intention for it, or a goal in mind to have the conversation, like, hey, I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about like health and vaccine, and hopefully by the end of this conversation you could just hear my perspective or something without judgment. Yeah, that could be helpful.
That's a good point. Like, what is my purpose? What is my purpose? Am I trying to convince them, or do I just want them to hear where I'm coming from? Is it just because I want to express something and that's it? Just what is my purpose?
Right.
Yes, all great helpful tips.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, because sometimes people they ask, they're like, "Oh," your mom will call you and be like, "Oh, you better get that vaccine," and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh man," they're hard conversations to have because it's like your family, but you just have to set your ground, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. So beyond COVID, the Black and Brown communities around the world, because this has really been like a global uprising, have really experienced such an array of emotions this year. What have you seen that's common that has been expressed in like your line of work, and what has been like your preferred method of treatment?
When you say common, that's been expressed in terms of what?
Oh, just I guess like things that your clients might be feeling that are within like that scope of this global uprising that's been happening. What have they been expressing
Mm,
to you as things that they've been encountering
yeah.
feeling wise?
A few feelings that I would say has been a theme has been anger, frustration, and just this isn't a feeling, but just another thing that I've noticed is like solidarity.
Mm.
Just like I've just been noticing a lot of solidarity. Um, and it's just like you said, it's been an interesting and unique array of emotions, but I would say just anger and solidarity are the two main things that I've noticed.
Is there any tips that you give people that when they're feeling angry about that particular topic, or any notes on that aspect of solidarity?
Hmm. When people are experiencing anger, so I think it's human, it's a human instinct to want to try to get rid of our anger, right? But we actually should be doing the opposite. I believe we should be leading into the anger, and we want to be asking the anger, if this anger could talk, what would it say?
Mm.
What is this anger trying to
I
tell
love
me?
that.
What is this anger trying to teach me? We want to tap into the anger to help mobilize us to do the things that matter to us. I think anger can be a very useful tool because all feelings are there for a reason,
Hmm.
and there is no bad or negative, like there is no bad feeling. So so just really tap into that anger and just ask that anger, what is it that I need to be doing? And as cliche as this sounds, it's really practicing self-care, because a lot of the news that we're hearing is overwhelming and it is frustrating, and it can lead to a lot of feelings of helplessness. But you want to take care of yourself, and you also want to connect with people who align with your morals and your values, so you don't feel so alone, you don't feel so disconnected.
Right. Yeah, and that's outside, like beyond of like the social media scope, because sometimes there's a lot of connection that happens there, but there's a lot of
Hmm.
connection that can happen, like you said, in safe ways based on your preference, but
Hmm.
making those connections maybe outdoors as well in some particular way.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. What
Um,
feelings have you guys been experiencing?
I've had a lot of just feelings of just feeling overwhelmed, just because
Yeah, that's a good one. Hmm.
there's just so many different things, so many different feelings to have. So it's just overwhelming, I think.
I try to cut back my news in the morning, but I have my Google thing telling me every single news situation, and I've been trying to stop that. But every time I hear something that's, the injustices to, the postal service not working, I just feel that frustration and anger. Like, I just want things to run smoothly and things to be functioning as for society, but there's so many different roadblocks for so many different types of people and cultures and society. Even here in living in Spain, there's so many different
Yeah.
types of, disruptions. So
And how has that been in particular? Because you've had these feelings, but you've been from afar. So has that developed any particular feelings as well?
Um, yeah, feeling a little helplessless, living abroad. But also listening to the information now, because Madrid is going to like another lockdown for the pandemic because the cases are rising. So now
I did
people,
that.
yeah, it's getting pretty bad here. So people are like
Oh.
protesting on the streets, like fighting against cops, and that's not normal. That hasn't been normal here. It's been a pretty easy
Wow.
lockdown. So now people are more like, this isn't right. A lot of, the economy is going to suffer completely. So yeah, so a lot of things that been dealing with, but you know, I've been trying to up my self-care at the same time too. So
Mhm.
yeah. All right, Leah. So depression and suicide are at all-time high due to a lot of, you know, welfare cuts, the pandemic, and so much uncertainty. How can we help prevent suicide through social media amongst our community, or be sensitive to others that might feel depressed or suicidal?
On a macro level, we really want to prevent suicide by providing resources and having universal health care and like all of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to just really equalize the playing field. But on a very micro level, what we have control over now is we have to talk about suicide. We have to destigmatize suicide. We have to be able to know what the warning signs of suicide are. We have to listen to people the first time they tell us they're feeling suicidal, or that they don't want to live, or they don't have the will to live, or they have no purpose in life. We want to take these things seriously. We want to let people know that they're not alone and that we're here to listen. And we want to be able to let them know that we are here to support them in getting help. And even if it's something as little as sitting with them and watching a TV show with them, just to let them know that they're not alone. um, I think, you know, we have to destigmatize the word suicide.
Okay, and some
Yeah.
practices that we can do to destigmatize that through our community, maybe in social media, be more like possibly be more open and discuss mental health issues. And what do you think?
Yeah, just talking about it, just saying, you know, like what you're doing right now, talking about suicide rates and how all of these things, how we've all been affected, and just being able to say that, you know, it's normal if you're experiencing suicidal ideation. It makes sense, and I validate that.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's an interesting note. Like, I think so many of us that people wouldn't think about have thought about suicide.
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Right.
like you said, like normalizing that would be coming out with your own story about it, which would take a lot of
Mhm.
courage, right? Because we're all just afraid of judgment, and it's hard.
Yeah, there's so
But
much. Yeah.
so much judgment,
Go
but
ahead.
I wonder if if more of us just maybe became honest about that and talked about our own moments that we felt like, oh, you know, I considered suicide. I didn't do it, but I thought
Mm-hmm.
about it, and and somebody would be like, oh dang, you know, like
Mm-hmm.
you can get out of that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there's so much shame attached to suicide. And I think when people think like suicidal ideation, they think intent and plan, right? This is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to use, and this is what time I'm going
Yeah.
to do it. But then there's a whole other side of suicidal ideation, which is passive suicidal ideation. And this is where it's like, if I got hit by a car right now, I would be okay. Or
Oh.
if I just didn't wake up tomorrow, that would be just fine, right? So we need to talk about both types of suicidal ideation, both active
Yeah.
and passive, because as a society, we just focus on the active, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, do you have access to knives? Okay, let's take away all the knives, whatever. But then there are people, but the people who are experiencing passive suicidal ideation, you know, those people need support too.
Got it.
Wow, yeah. I hadn't realized
Mm-hmm.
that those thoughts would be considered like passive suicide
Mm-hmm.
thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Because there's no intent or plan. I believe that it's not prioritized as much as somebody with intent or plan, and I can understand that, but it definitely needs to be acknowledged that these are people who need support too.
Yes. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. Those are great resources, and just to know and understand that
Hmm.
language, I think
Hmm.
would be helpful for people.
Hmm. And just let people know that you are there for them and that you are unbiased, and being able to ask people, what do you need, how can I support you, instead of assuming, you know what they need.
Yeah.
Yeah, be of support during these trying times for
Hmm.
sure. So
Hmm.
so helpful. Even your strongest friends and family that seem like they're fine, you know, just reach out
Yeah.
to them and ask, you know, do you need help with anything? Do you need to someone to talk to? That could be super helpful. Could
Mm-hmm.
change someone's
Hmm.
whole year.
Yes. 100%. Definitely. Yeah. So
I love
keep reaching
that.
out, everybody. Keep putting yourself out there. Touch base
Yeah.
with your family, friends, WhatsApp, however that may be.
Mm-hmm.
Just take that extra step.
Yeah, so we hope you found this episode helpful for you and helpful for your daily life and practice. Is there anything you would like to leave our listeners with, Leah?
Just hope that everybody, whatever you're feeling, just knowing that you're not alone, that this pandemic has hit everybody globally, and it is completely okay if, you know, you're hitting a pandemic wall and you're feeling like you just can't do this anymore. It's completely okay if you're experiencing rage by everything that's happening, you know, socially, economically, politically. All of those feelings are okay. All of those feelings are valid, and you just really want to be able to do the best you can to take care of yourself, whatever that looks like for you. And just in terms of trauma, what we're going through right now is a collective global trauma, right? And that doesn't mean everybody's going to develop PTSD. It definitely doesn't mean that. But what we're going through is a collective trauma. And, you know, one of the ways that we know to reduce long-term symptoms of trauma is we have to talk about what's happening in the moment, how we're feeling in the moment. So I just encourage everybody to find somebody that feels safe to them and just share how you're feeling. And that's it. And if you don't have anybody that feels safe, that's okay. Journal about it, meditate on it, but just get in touch with it.
Love that. Thank you so much,
Amazing.
Leah. Thank you so much for all your work in the community and also all the amazing quotes and mental health tips on your Instagram. Guys, please follow Alyssa Marie Wellness. Her amazing engaged community is thriving, so be sure to stalk her.
Yes, she's been contributing to a lot of articles. There's a lot of great stuff that she's sharing. So use those resources. Those are free resources Leah is providing you with. So
yeah, thank you. And I really like that. There's, you know, when we talk about how do we take care of ourselves, there's free resources, everybody. The internet is filled with free resources and free apps that'll help you take care of yourself.
Yep, those meditation apps like Ease and Calm and you know, so many free ones you could use for a month. So tap into that, tap into all those resources, guys. And thank you, Darlin, for joining us for the season 3, episode 1 of our Conscious Kitchen podcast.
Yes,
thank you for so having me.
Yes. Also, you guys, be sure to register to vote, and yeah, just love on each other, all right?
Yes. Bye, guys. See you for this is season 3. See you for episode 2.
Woo-hoo! Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.